Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and I specifically want to talk about the Shadowdark RPG, and my supposition that I think Kelsey Dionne of Arcane Library is emerging as the OSR's own Lorraine Williams. And if you don't know, Lorraine Williams was the hand-picked CEO of Dungeons & Dragons. She was handpicked by Gary Gygax to be the CEO of TSR, and TSR had nothing valuable except Dungeons & Dragons. So she was the CEO of Dungeons & Dragons from 1986 to 1997. I think every history book that's been written is massively unfair and incredibly prejudiced to her, and really and that we really don't know the history of, there really isn't any proper history written about Lorraine Williams at the moment, but I do understand the history of Lorraine Williams, and I think if you properly understand the history of Lorraine Williams, that she was the hand-picked CEO of Dungeons & Dragons from 1986 to 1997, and that more than any one figure in Dungeons & Dragons, Lorraine Williams did more to catapult Dungeons & Dragons to its current modern success. I think it puts everything into perspective, and I think there's an opportunity that Kelsey Dionne can emerge as the Lorraine Williams of OSR right now in this moment. And the reason why is the 2023 Manic Panic, which others call the 2023 OGL Crisis. And so I think there's something incredibly important happening for Dungeons & Dragons and for the OSR with Shadowdark RPG. And I think that what this is a storm of probability, and it is the cultural and commercial skirmish that has existed for a while, that has existed since, when did the OSR really begin? That's a good question. So I would say that the OSR itself began in, I would say 2003. I think the OSR is exactly 20 years old. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I am learning a lot about the OSR right now because I got people coming in from the OSR and talking about Shadowdark RPG. And I understand why OSR people are interested in Shadowdark RPG. They should be interested in Shadowdark RPG. And actually, every Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master and player should be interested in Shadowdark RPG, because the reality is there is no fiercer competitor coming out of the OSR than Shadowdark RPG. And I think it's really important, and I think what's really happening right now is that Kelsey Dionne is emerging as the OSR's Lorraine Williams, which is fascinating. So let's talk about it. Let's get you there, all right? So first of all, if you don't know, Lorraine Williams' history is not what you've been told. A lot of people are like, she drove TSR into bankruptcy, right? And this is like saying that Jeff Bezos, like, Amazon didn't make a profit for 20 years, right? The fact that there were points of time where TSR had very little money under Lorraine Williams is utterly meaningless. Today, there are entire industries that burn profit, that don't make a profit, and burn debt for 5, 10, 15 years. Amazon burnt profit for 20 years. They borrowed and remained in debt and never made a single dollar, right? So the big, so what you have is a whole bunch of misogynists who come and say, oh, I'm really upset that there was a queen of Dungeons & Dragons for 11 years, and so what I want to tell you is that she almost got him to the point of bankruptcy. And the reality is the only thing that happened was on the finance side. With she was an incredible guardian of Dungeons & Dragons, and every single benefit Dungeons & Dragons has today came through her, because she preserved Dungeons & Dragons, and frankly, let's not pretend, fixed every problem that Gary Gygax had, right? Gary Gygax was an amazing genius, and he brought forward, in what is, in my humble opinion, the greatest secular human flourishment engine ever created. That's what Dungeons & Dragons is, in my humble opinion. And he spent, from 1974 to 1986, doing a great job, right? But in 1983, he went to make the D&D the D&D Saturday morning cartoon, which was massively successful for Dungeons and Dragons. But when he was in Hollywood, there's a lot of history out coming right now that he had some very bad behavior for 3 years and made some extremely unhealthy life choices, which ended his marriage and ended his ability to be the commercial and creative leader of TSR. He was a great man, and just like every great man and great woman today, they make great mistakes, and he made this massive mistake. I think it ended his first marriage, and he picked up some very, very bad habits in Hollywood, and it ended his ability to run Dungeons and Dragons. But since he was a genius, he picked Lorraine Williams, and she took he handpicked her, right? That's history. Like, if you don't understand that, you need to go read more, right? So he handpicked Lorraine Williams, right? And he said, guardian this for another, XYZ years, and she put 11 years into it and made Dungeons and Dragons incredibly valuable. And some of Dungeons and Dragons' greatest successes happened between 1986 and 1997. And in 1997, Lorraine Williams had built Dungeons and Dragons into a massive powerhouse that was bought by Wizards of the Coast, who had a mountain of money, right, from Magic the Gathering. Right? So that's the true history. And Lorraine Williams is a queen of Dungeons and Dragons, and she did nothing but make it valuable. And if you hear anything other than what I just said, you're dealing with a misogynist who absolutely hates the fact that D&D had a queen for 11 years, right? And so that's the true history of Lorraine Williams. Kelsey Dionne, I think she is emerging right now as the OSR's Lorraine Williams, right? A woman who comes in and fixes every problem other men set up, right? And so did Kelsey Dionne ask for this? Absolutely not. She didn't ask for any of this, right? She did one thing that has put her in the middle of a virtual firestorm. She said that Shadowdark RPG is an OSR game. And I think she was just being truthful. I think it is an OSR game, right? But the moment she attached OSR to Shadowdark, it basically, that game owned every single promise that the OSR made in January 2023. And in January 2023, people were more angry with Hasbro over their ownership of Dungeons and Dragons than has ever happened in the history of Dungeons and Dragons. It was a to be clear, Dungeon Dudes and Professor Dungeon Master both referred to it as a war, right? That a war happened, right? Like, now, of course, they were saying a cultural war and a commercial war. I think the better term for it is a skirmish, right? I don't think, I would like to tell you that nobody wanted to end the other, but that's not true. D&D Begone was a promise to end Dungeons and Dragons, and the OSR freely engaged in that promise. And attached to saying D&D Begone, there was a promise that they could replace Dungeons and Dragons. And for a long time, the OSR lived in the shadows, and they would peek out from their little, from their little rock, and they would throw stones at Dungeons and Dragons, right? But in January 2023, everything changed. And what happened is the OSR got, if you don't understand this, I don't know how to, if you don't understand that Pathfinder is an OSR game, I can lead you to water. I can't make you drink, okay? Of course it's an old school game. It literally copied 3rd edition, which is 24 years old, right? If you don't think a game, if you don't think a game that is literally a copy of a game that's 24 years old is old school, what do you even Yeah, I can't believe some of the comments I get saying that Pathfinder is an OSR. It's ridiculous. Pathfinder is 100% OSR. And guess what? Pathfinder 2 is absolutely OSR because it's just a bad copy of Pathfinder 1. And neither one of them has gotten even 2 centimeters of distance from Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. They're so that, yes, Pathfinder is an OSR, right? So basically, where we arrive is we arrived at, and Pathfinder, it was in the middle of this, and Pathfinder sold 8 months of product in 1 month. They sold out almost 2/3 of a year's inventory in 1 month. because people were so angry with Dungeons and Dragons, right? And so the OSR got very uppity in January 2023, and they made promises that I'm not going to forget. And there's a massive amount of revisionism happening right now over what actually happened in in January 2023. But the OSR made promises, right? And so they had there have been 3 periods for the OSR. There was the, hey, we're a cute little parasite, and we just kind of have attached ourselves like a carbuncle to Dungeons and Dragons, and we draw blood from it, but nobody worries us about it because they know we're a parasite, right? And then there was this, and then with January 2023, right? Basically, what everybody realized was that the OSR was really a parasite that was trying to kill the host. That's the true history of what happened in January 2023, in my humble opinion, right? Now, here's where it gets interesting, okay? The OSR has massive problems, okay? And the biggest one is they have more conservatives than liberals, okay? D&D, I think, genuinely has more liberals than conservatives. And because they have more conservatives than liberals, they have a huge problem with prejudice. So basically, you will find some highly repugnant, incredibly prejudiced people in the OSR, right? And they have caused major amounts of problems. I would put Venger Satanis into this grouping. I would put the dude that does Lamentation of the Flame Princess into this bucket. I would put. There's a few. Let's call it there. Oh, new TSR. Everybody attached to new TSR. Are you kidding me? Right? Like there's a long list, right, of highly problematic people connected to the OSR, and they have attached some really repugnant things to the OSR. At the same time, the OSR has some brilliant, beautiful, genius creators, right? Ben from Questing Beast, Kelsey Dionne, Runehammer, okay? There's more. Those are ones that are coming to my mind right now. There's definitely some other. Oh, Dave Thomavor. He does review. Oh, he's actually written some games. He's a fantastic OSR creator, right? There's quite a few, right? So there are some strong OSR creators, right? Now at this point, who's going to fix the OSR? Well, get this. Kelsey Dionne didn't want any of this. She wanted to make a game. What makes Shadowdark RPG so important is, by a happy accident or a curse, Shadowdark came out directly after the OGL crisis, right? And there is a spotlight on OSR right now, and the whole world's going, hey, OSR, we're looking at you. What you got, right? And they're like, oh, we could trot out one of our crusty, grognard, horrible old white men who has a crap ton of prejudice, right? Or, hey, look at that. We have somebody who breaks every stereotype of the OSR, right? Perhaps open to liberal ideas, female, brilliant, winsome, or like everything that we are known not to be, Kelsey Dionne is. And guess what? She's got a finished game we can talk about right now that we can attach to the OSR. Now, why doesn't the OSR try to sell some of the stuff they had already made? Because it's all junk, and D&D has already, literally, virtually, not literally, devastated all of them, and just, take them out in the backyard and just beat the living gargle out of them, right? Dungeons and Dragons has defeated everything they got. It's defeated OSE, it's defeated DCC, it's defeated Pathfinder, and the reality is when these OSE products compete with Dungeons and Dragons, they look like amateur trash, right? And especially when you take the bog standard, OSR product and put it next to a D&D canon hardback that comes out every 3 months, they don't look the same, right? Like it's OSR is copy Weekend Warrior energy that really looks amateurish, right? And the reality is, Kelsey Dionne, here she is. She's got a done game, and she's arriving at the exact moment in time where she can become the queen of the OSR. And just like happened with D&D, she can shuffle off all the old crusty white men that are getting into a lot of bad behavior, which I think specifically is prejudice, right? And fix the OSR world. And that is why I think Shadowdark RPG right now is getting a ton of attention, right? Because it is it is a game, it is a good game, right? Not a, it really could have been great. If it and actually I think it's still okay. It's being Kickstarter. If they're like, hey, we apologize, this black and white arc is exactly the OSR copy junk energy that will assure this thing will go nowhere, and they actually put real that's what the game's missing, right? I think it has some innovative ideas, and I think the layout is sound enough, but the black and white art makes it just say, oh, this isn't a real competitor to D&D. This is a junk nonsense like thing that's supposed to appeal to 4 people in the world. But the reality is that's changing now. The OSR has this moment where it has the opportunity to actually compete with Dungeons & Dragons. And if the OSR will allow a Lorraine Williams to emerge the way Dungeons & Dragons did, because we have a progressive, inclusive history, then they can shed the massive rumors that they really are regressive and hateful, right? And Kelsey Dionne has the opportunity to bring the success to the OSR that Lorraine Williams brought to Dungeons & Dragons. The question is if the OSR will allow it, right? Right now, there are a lot of old, white grognards up in there, and the idea, and I'll tell you right now, I hear it every day, right? I defend Lorraine Williams, and you would not believe how upset middle-aged white men get upset when they're like, oh, how dare you remind me that a woman ruled Dungeons & Dragons for 11 years. Oh, I'm so upset. Let me talk about bankruptcy again, because I don't understand modern finance, which Lorraine Williams was 20 years ahead on, right? So that's my take. I really believe there's something very special happening with Shadowdark RPG, and Kelsey Dionne, if she can figure it out, if she can understand that she arrived at the exact right moment in time, right, to change the world and actually make OSR have a prayer of defeating Dungeons & Dragons, things could genuinely change. Do not forget for one moment, Shadowdark may be the most important book in all of tabletop role-playing games this year. This thing, there's a lot on the line. It is literally going to make history in either being the most hugely missed opportunity or reshaping the OSR's history, present and future, to match Dungeons & Dragons history, which was a brilliant queen who came and fixed every problem Gary gave for the game, right? But also brought that cool, genius, protector energy that Gary had before he went to Hollywood and essentially got corrupted. Every word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.